Today we'll be talking about Watchmen Chapter 8, Old Ghosts. So when we think about old ghosts, we might think about something about the past, some events from the past and haunt the present. This chapter provides different characters' reactions to the past, whether it's negative or positive. And the title Old Ghost here can refer to the old night owl. In Chapter 8, when Hollis Mason sees the tenement rescue on the news, he calls Sally Jupiter to reminisce the past. Back at the basement, Laurie, Jupiter, and Dan are planning to get Rozak out of the jail because Dan believes that Rozak has the information they need, and he assumes that somebody wants to use Dr. Manhattan to end the world. Later, a police detective stops by Dan's apartment and implies that he knows Dan is the Night Owl, which makes Dan think that they need to take action soon. They then break Rozak out of the prison. Welcome back to Dan's apartment, Dr. Manhattan comes back to take Laurie to Mars to have a talk. The news of Rozak's escape triggers a gang to kill Hollis Mason, thinking that he's the Night Owl that helped break Rozak out. The tale of Black Freighter. With thoughts of his dead family, the marina says, chose madness. He decided to leap from his raft into the sea only to find he had arrived. He considered himself a specter of revenge on the flow tide home. At last, he imagines himself as the ghost. He thinks he's dead already. He's eager for revenge. In other words, he's trapped in the past. So now let's move to the themes. And the first one is liberation. And apparently this chapter talks about the physical liberation of Rozak from prison. Dan and Laurie also undergo a liberation of their own. Dan in particular felt the loss when he was forced to hang up his night vision goggles. And now that he's back in costume, he's more confident and easily assumes the role of leader. Although Laurie protests that she doesn't like her costume, but she does admit that she missed the thrill of having a secret. Both she and Dan appear to have a newfound sense of purpose and energy now that they are back in their vigilante gang. These also tie to the Halloween imagery, where the little kids dress up for trick-or-treats and Watchmen dress up for hiding their identities to save the world. And in this context, we may say that it's naive for these heroes to save the world. And the second one is nostalgia. When Hollis Mason is bitten by the thugs, the authors added the scenes when Hollis Mason was fighting with the Nazis. In the flashback, Hollis Mason was able to win the fights against the bad guys, but in the end he was killed by the gangsters. Flashbacks like this shows the days when heroes are favored by the country, a sign that shows how good the days were with these heroes and how chaotic it is now without them. And the perfume on the first page of the chapter shows up throughout Watchmen, both in bottle form and in advertisements, called Nostalgia. It's one of Asian's many commercial products. It's interesting that it appears every time a character or a group of characters reflects on the past. And a close-up of the bottle is shown as Hollis and Sally discusses the good old days, and a billboard for the perfume is in the background as the top nuts race to Hollis' house. Their actions are reminiscent of the old days of costumed vigilantism. The billboard's message, "Oh, how the ghost of you clings," ties into the chapter title, The Old Ghosts. The ghosts of Hollis' past, which are the old Night Owl and his subsequent reveal of himself in his autobiography Under the Hood, are catching up with him. Next is violence and vigilantism. In the jail, Rozak had conflict with the criminals who tried to kill him but later stopped because the criminals cannot win the fight against him, showing that problems in this world can only be solved using violence, implying only violence would end the greater conflict between USA and the USSR in this world. The King enacted a law of vigilantism in 1977. Unlike police officers, vigilantes do not have to obey any standards of law. Some of them, such as the comedian Rozak, often crossed the bounds of what was considered fair and acceptable treatment of criminals. And the top knots, named for the hairstyle of a bun on top of the head, haven't forgotten that. Their leader is Durf, and his girlfriend has a swastika tattoo on her arm. The pair are very eager to get justice for all the evils they think vigilantes have caused in the past. As a result, they and the gangs killed Hollis Mason. The irony of this is that They are doing the exact same things they hate about vigilantes and essentially become the one they despise the most. And now symbols. The first one is the trophy. Hollis Mason won this trophy for his service as a masked fighter, while the gangsters also use it to kill him. The trophy signifies the glory time he served for the Watchmen, and is his own glory that killed him, which implies that the Watchmen are no longer loved by the people, but rather hated. The trophy was bright and shiny, but when a gangster used it to kill Mason, the trophy created an owl-like shadow on his face, implying that the good old days have passed and the dark has arrived, corresponding to the chaos that is happening. And next is the Nepenthe Garden, which is Sally's rest resort. The word Nepenthe originates from the Greek mythology, and it first appears in the 4th book of Homer's Odyssey. It is a fictional medicine for sorrow, a drug of forgetfulness. Or we can say that it's a painkiller, and the pain here is her fixation on the past, so she's trying to avoid her past time as being a hero. The nostalgia perfume, as we talked about in the themes, it definitely ties tightly to the past. And now I want to point out when Laurie, Dan, and Rosa return to Dan's apartment, while Laurie is packing up, she picks up the nostalgia perfume bottle, thinking about the past. And as soon as she begins thinking about the past, Dr. Manhattan appears and wants to talk to her. And the jack-o'-lantern. The jack-o'-lantern represents the relationship between the first and second night owl. When Hollis Mason is making the jack-o'-lantern for Halloween, Dan and Laurie are getting ready to break Rorschach out of the prison. We can see a similarity between the shape of jack-o'-lantern and the owl ship, which serves as a link of the two night owls, the past of a distinct new generation. And later on, when Hollis Mason is killed by the gangsters, the jack-o'-lantern breaks, which means the official end of the first generation of night owl. The calendars. As we can see here, the detective speaks to Dan that two kinds of people have calendars. People who pick up next month's picture in advance, and people who don't, which are you. And later on, Dan and Laurie do is to change the calendar before it's actually November. And the hawk here represents a predator taking action, a symbol of looking ahead. And that's what they did. They learned from the past and to save Rorschach. So some allusions. This picture is Shay, the author of the Tale of Black Freighter. And on the next page, there's him again on an island. And beside him, a woman is drawing a strange object, and I would say it looks like a squid, which alludes to Adrian's project to save humanity from nuclear holocaust. And next is the poem at the end of the chapter called Halloween by Eleanor Foggio. On Halloween the old ghosts come about us, and they speak to some, to others they are dumb. They haunt the hearts that love them best. In some they are by grief possessed, in other hearts they rest. They have a knowledge they will tell, to some of us it's a nail, to some a miracle. They come unseen and go unseen, and some will never know they've been, and some know all they mean. The poem really shows nostalgia and represents the chapter really well. The scene just before the poem included Top-Knot beating Hollis Mason to death, as well as the neighborhood kids discovering his dad dressed in Halloween costumes. This shows that we can never truly escape from our past, and everything will eventually catch up with us. The New Frontiersman articles. Honor is like the hawk, sometimes it must go hooded, by Hector Godfrey. Godfrey accuses Doug Roth, the head of Nova Express, who criticized Mexican vigilantes and started the questions about Dr. Manhattan's cancer-causing effects. Godfrey relates the hero's vigilante justice to the Ku Klux Klan. This again condemns the ideas of masked vigilantes performing their own justice outside the law, and adds to the novel's negative perspective of right-wing media. This expert also highlights it's so hard to trust any media in a polarized world. Lastly, let's talk about colors. In Chapter 8, the red, orange, and yellow are the prominent colors, which implies the escalating violence. And let's take a look at the alternating panels depicting Sally and Hollis' conversation. The frames focusing on Sally are light and sunny, with the dominant color yellow. The frames showing Hollis' home are darker with lots of purple shadows. The mood of the frames indicates that Sally's life may be a little bit happier than Hollis, since Sally is getting a pedicure and has fresh flowers in her room, while Hollis Stacks holds an old tin can labeled phone money, and he mentions how expensive it is to call California.